All right. Well, Kenny, great to see you again. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, good to be here again, Dan. Can't believe it's been a month already.
I know. So, for listeners out there, if this is the first time you're listening, thank you. I'm Dan Pallison, wealth manager, financial psychologist, joined by Kenny Gatliff, CFA, investment manager. And so, we've worked together for many years now. So, we commit to having conversations that bring to light, or bring some topics into the light, but also to keep them within 10 minutes. So, I'll jump right in. So, Kenny, I am recording from San Diego. So
Mhm.
I'm here with family, with my boys, my 3-year-old and 6-year-old. We're getting some beach time. So we're enjoying some traveling and some vacation here in San Diego, cooler weathers than in Arizona. Um, but I kind of wanted to talk about like the cost of vacations and why we do that. So how does that sound to you?
That sounds. I actually just got back from vacation as well, so that sounds like a good
Oh,
topic.
perfect. Okay. I was going to say, you look a little, your nose is a little red. Looks like you got some sun.
Always, yeah. No, we were in Mexico for a week, so I was,
Awesome.
definitely gotten plenty of sun.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Kenny. You're an investment manager, you're a CFA. I assume you just do this in your head. But
Boy.
when I run financial plans with clients and we talk about like vacations, travel, we more often than not just land on the round number of like $10,000. If we're traveling, what if we spent 10,000 a year to travel, have some experiences in retirement? You and I are not in retirement, so we've got that a few years away for us. But let's just use that number 10,000. So if we spend 10,000 on a family vacation, you and I both have kids,
Hmm.
um, and let's say we'll say 40-ish, maybe we retire typical retirement age mid 60s, so maybe 25 years. If that $10,000 was invested and earning like 10% interest over the next 25 years, what do you have any idea what that could be?
Okay, so there's a good rule of thumb that is pretty easy to use here, which is the rule of seven. Using just approximation. So
Mm-hmm.
if something's growing at 10%, it takes 7 years to double. If it's growing at 7%, it takes 10 years to double.
Okay.
So in this case, you get, it can double 3.5 times in 25 years.
And
So
before you say it, because I can tell you have it, you know the answer. The listener or the viewer, think to yourself, $10,000 invested over 25 years, aggressively invested, earning maybe 10% interest every year. What do you think that number would be? 10,000 a day. What would that be 25 years from now? So, all right, Kenny, what do you have?
yeah, so the power of compounding is impressive. So it doubles 3.5 times. So I think most people say, oh, you have 10,000 will go to 35,000 because people think 3.5 times. But actually, 10 times, well, 10,000, if you double it 3 times, it's 80,000. 4 times is 160. So if we're split in the middle there, it's going to be 110, 120,000, somewhere around that ballpark.
Got it.
And I think that's always very surprising to people to think that your dollar at just 10%, which is kind of a historical, pretty normal growth rate for the stock market, will
Yeah.
actually grow 10x in 25 years or a little
Uh,
bit more than 10x in 25 years. So that it's definitely one of those numbers that kind of messes with you and makes you realize how valuable that compounding is.
so you're saying, Kenny, if I'm spending 10,000 on vacation here in San Diego, I'm costing my future self in retirement 25 years from now about 100,000 to 120,000. That's what.
Yeah, pretty much. If you look at it like that, it's a hard way of looking at life, especially when you're younger. Is that every purchase is saying, "Well, I know this is going to be worth 10x," or when you're in your 20s, maybe 40x or higher than that. So it's one of those kind of happy mediums. You do have to thread the needle of
Yeah.
what's worth it to me now versus what's worth it to me in the future.
So you're a numbers guy. You're a CFA, chartered financial analyst. I would just assume that you know exactly, the future value of money, that you don't spend a dollar beyond the basic necessities because you're setting yourself up for retirement. But you also just told me you got back from Mexico with your family. So Kenny, why on earth are you spending any money today to travel with your family?
No, it's a good question. There's some obvious answers there, right? But looking at it, there's just the kind of mathematical one is, there's a reason you get money, you get interest or growth from investing, whether it be in CDs or bonds or, stocks, is that people know that money is worth more now than it's worth in the future. And that's why they're willing to give you a return for it. And the same is true for us, right? That money, the future is not guaranteed, and we don't know what that's going to look like. So not ignoring the future, is important, but it's also important to not ignore the present. And I think that's where, when I said you got to thread that needle, that's where it's really important to, for one, know your values, know what brings you joy, what's important to you. Don't just spend, without thinking about it. But if you know what's important to you both now and in the future, and then you can start assigning values to that, well, then you can start spending without having, the freak out of, oh, am I spending too much? Or on the flip side, am I spending too little? Am I going to, die with $5 million when I've missed all these things for my kids? And so I think that's where it's saying, okay, well, once you kind of narrow down in on that and say, okay, what's that number I need in retirement to be happy, or to have enough to feel secure and do what I want? What do I need to invest today to reach that number? What's using some pretty modest growth rates and pretty modest investment rates. What do I need to do to get there? And once you're doing that, well, then you have that kind of freedom and giving yourself that authority to spend money now, because you know what your future number is and you're on your way to achieving that. And so that's why, it's really hard if you don't know what that number is. And
yeah,
because then it's always, it's a little bit of the Schindler's List. There's always a little bit more I can put in there, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's hard not to have that mindset unless you've really honed in on what your numbers are.
Right. No, gosh, that's such a good answer, Kenny. I like that. I like it. If I can paraphrase, or at least how I understand what you said, was identify what matters to you, what brings you joy. I mean, we're dads, so spending time with our families, with our young kids, like that's priceless. At the ages they are, we can't get those years back. But also like knowing, how much you need in the future, what ultimately, makes, like, what's important to you and what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? And you can identify the number. And if anything, it can give you some freedom into spending today. So let me kind of rephrase. I'm with you. I mean, obviously I'm on vacation. I've got young kids. I kind of see it as, the typical, how many summers do we have left before they're out of the house, right? We want to take advantage of that. And so I see that more as like, this is priceless. Like you can't put a price on it to spend time with family. I mean, I like to golf. Do I buy golf clubs every year? Of course not. Number one, it wouldn't actually help my game. Number two, that is money that should be left in my investment accounts, right? It's not that's not priceless to me. But time with kids, getting to the beach, that can be. But once you start to think through, the time value of money calculations, it can be paralyzing to think, wow, every dollar that I don't spend today can earn interest, can compound over time, and I can be left with, multiples of that in the future. And that could be paralyzing for folks. But if you have a good idea of what you need in retirement, then it just frees you up to basically spend the money now, have the experiences now, and not be bogged down by the guilt of, oh, I'm really hurting myself in the future. And I think it comes from knowing what that future self needs and wants and desires and what's going to be important to you throughout life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then obviously the flip side of that is, okay, if you're in retirement, yeah, you lose that ability to compound, but you also lose the time to make it up if you overspend. I think people get very worried about that as well. And, I see that being a paralyzing fear that we've seen with a lot of clients. And again, it's one of those things, if you know your numbers, if you know that, you're in retirement and you can spend X amount of dollars per year, and you've run the math on it, and you can see that, you're, well within your plan in order to spend those dollars. Well, once again, that can give you that freedom and that kind of sense of peace in spending that money. So I think, no matter what your stage of life, if you either can do it yourself or, working with someone like yourself, Dan, that can help you, step through that, if you know those things, it makes life a lot easier, and it makes, the spending decisions in life a lot easier for sure.
Yeah. Well, Kenny, thank you for indulging me in a little bit more of a high level conversation, but I still think you brought some truth and some insight. We're at 9 minutes and 40 seconds, so I will sign off, but thanks again. And I'll talk to you in a month.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
Bye.